there's a sentiment being expressed in the political pundit world about how all of a sudden Biden seems so much more effective as a leader, so much more competent. Obviously not competent in his ability to communicate, but competent in his effectiveness as a leader, getting things done. And so I think there's truth to that. And I think, or what I wanted to do was kind of in one segment, even though I've talked about all of these things at different times within different contexts, have one solidified segment where I respond to that new sentiment and respond to the recent wins we've seen from the Democratic Party. So to start with, I think generally part of the reason why people feel more favorable towards the Democrats lately is because we're seeing the economy shift back in the correct direction. Now, yes, inflation is still way too high. Gas prices have not come down enough, but because we're back on track going in the right direction, inflation has slowed, which is what we would want to see in a time like we're in, and gas prices are coming down really fast. People will feel like, okay, if things keep going like they're going, we will get where we want to go eventually. And we wouldn't want to jerk the party out of power right now that is allowing the good things to happen in the right direction, even though, again, we haven't gotten where we want to go. But inflation is slowing, gas prices are going down, and employment is at all-time highs. We have record low unemployment, which is very significant. And I will say quickly, while I don't think you can give that much credit to the Biden administration or to the Democrats, pretty much none, for the slowing of inflation and the dropping gas prices, as y'all know, I also don't think you could have blamed them when they were bad, because whenever you have a massive economic crisis, the government's having to dump tons of money into the economy just to keep it surviving, which I think they should have done. But then it's going to naturally cause a situation where, because you dumped all that money in the economy, there's going to be inflation. And then the pandemic caused very unique supply chain issues, which caused prices to go up even more. And then on top of that, corporations were doing record price gouging because they were using this excuse of inflation to jack up prices way past what even inflation necessitated. So all of that combined, yes, you're going to have bad inflation. You can't blame Biden or the Democrats for that. And that's why I fought back so much against people who were saying it's Biden's fault for high gas prices. That just wasn't factual, but I'm going to be consistent and recognize now that they're coming down, that's actually not something you can give Biden credit for. Same thing with inflation. But job growth, there's an argument there. Obviously, after the pandemic, when we had super low employment, because a lot of people had to stay home and all that type of stuff, a lot of people got laid off, you're going to see job growth after that, because a lot of people, once the economy kicks back into gear, are going to get a job back. But you have to recognize, if you're conservative, one of the key things you gave Trump credit for was record low unemployment, right? And he brought it from an already pretty good place under Obama and brought it down a little bit to record low unemployment, right? The economy was doing, compared to other economies throughout our history and other economies in the world, was doing pretty good under Obama. Then Trump came into power and it kept kind of going that direction, and we got record low unemployment. But it was already pretty low, right? Okay. Biden got in power, unemployment wasn't already low, and now it's all the way back down to 3.5, which was what y'all bragged about under Trump. So you do have to recognize, okay, maybe there's something to be given credit for to Biden for overseeing that. And there's some things that the Democratic Party has done that I think could contribute to the fact that we've gotten back to such low unemployment pretty quickly after seeing it rise so much under the pandemic. So I'm not saying that job growth wasn't going to happen. It was, because the economy kind of turned back on and all these jobs came back. But to get it all the way back to record lows is pretty incredible. And again, I don't think that's all something you can give Biden credit for, or the Democratic Party. Same thing. I don't think you can give them that much credit for inflation, gas prices back sort of head in the right direction. But it's something people will feel and they'll be happy about, and they will give the current party that's in power credit for. So that, I think, is contributing a lot to people feeling more favorable towards the Democratic Party more generally, and giving more credit to them even legislatively for stuff. So now getting into stuff that I do think you can give them more credit for, and that's the legislative wins they've had. And specifically the Inflation Reduction Act that happened recently. So I saw something on Twitter that just scrolls through all the different things that you could say happened under Biden and our wins under Biden. So I'm going to read this out for our podcast listeners, and we'll play it on screen for our video viewers. But then we'll discuss after. So the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, the PACT Act, first major gun safety legislation in decades, ended America's longest war, record job growth, took out the leader of Al-Qaeda, historically low unemployment, confirmation of first black woman to Supreme Court, united our allies in support of Ukraine, expanded the NATO alliance, the American Rescue Plan, once in a generation infrastructure law, historic funding for HBCUs, reauthorized the Violence Against Women Act, record high ACA enrollment, record pace of judicial confirmations, taking aggressive action on climate, allowed Medicare to negotiate lower drug prices, capped seniors' drug expenses, capped the cost of insulin for Medicare recipients, implemented a ban on surprise health insurance bills, rejoined the Paris Climate Accords, banned chokeholds and no-knock raids for federal law enforcement, signed executive orders to protect reproductive rights, raised the minimum wage for federal contractors to $15 an hour, issued historic executive order advancing LGBTQ equality, all jobs lost in the pandemic recovered. With all that being said, I recognize it's not enough. I recognize, compared to what Biden promised, what he originally proposed, what this moment calls for, it's not enough. But you also have to recognize within this moment we're in, the political landscape that is present, Joe Manchin being someone that has to be negotiated with, it's pretty incredible that we got what we got, honestly. I mean, Joe Manchin, super conservative, he obstructed Biden for months. His entire plan was obstructed by Joe Manchin. And Joe Manchin got more popular in West Virginia. He got more popular among his constituents. So it's pretty incredible that all that was done with that context in mind. Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin seemingly were obstructing everything until just recently. Almost everything. So that's pretty incredible. I think it should be celebrated on the part of Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, etc. The Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, it invests in climate change at record levels. It expands the Affordable Care Act. It decreases prescription drug costs for Medicare recipients, as well as other things. And then you have the infrastructure bill that was passed in a bipartisan manner, which in this moment is pretty crazy. The American Rescue Plan at the top of Biden's administration was also very significant. The gun safety legislation was not that much, but more than we'd had in a long time. So I guess that's definitely good. As well as many other things. You saw the PACT Act, expanding coverage for veterans exposed to toxins, the CHIP and Science Act, investing in domestic manufacturing of chips, which will definitely be important for the future we're headed into. And then some of the great executive orders Biden has signed as well. I do think his leadership in the Russian-Ukraine war and kind of supporting Ukraine in that effort has been very good. So yeah, I think especially with the Inflation Reduction Act getting signed into law, that's what makes me go, okay, that's actually impressive what was able to get done within that piece of legislation. And then that combined with the other things that have happened is pretty amazing. And again, it's amazing within the context of the political landscape that we have. Not amazing compared to what he promised, not amazing compared to what I wish we could have gotten. But I don't think we could have gotten any of those things with Joe Manchin. And I didn't think we would have even been able to get that with Joe Manchin. So with that, on top of the job growth and the unemployment, on top of hopefully the inflation and gas prices continuing to go in the right direction, I think you have a good situation for the Democrats in the midterms.